This is Business Incorporated coming to you live from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chimize Obi Iwago. On the program today, U.S. court lifts restraining orders affecting Congo Eurobond. South Africa molds merger of 3 state-owned airlines. Plus, Europe's largest insurer, Allianz, set to buy Nigeria's mid-cap Ensure Insurance PLC. Let's get started now. We're beginning with the markets, and here in Africa, Egyptian markets continue to outperform the others. At intraday, the index was up 1.21%. And looking at the other markets here in Nigeria, the index was down 1.51% at intraday. The market in South Africa was also looking up 0.12%. Kenyan market closed down 0.42% on Tuesday. On the Middle East, Abu Dhabi's developer Eshrak Properties rose on merger talk, outperforming an otherwise weak local stock index, while Dubai firmed on the back of gains in real estate firms. Eshrak jumped 2.4% on news that it is discussing a potential merger with an Abu Dhabi-based privately held investment firm, Reem Investments. The Abu Dhabi index was up 0.11% at intraday. In neighboring Dubai, the index was up 0.74%. Damak Properties rose 1% and Emma Properties added 0.2%. Qatar's index was down, slipping 0.66%. The largest lender, Qatar National Bank, rose 0.5%, regaining some of Tuesday's losses. The Saudi index is closed for a public holiday. And in Europe, the markets there edged higher in morning trade as investors tried to oust any nerves surrounding North Korea tensions and took advantage of the positive sentiment seen overseas. For more, let's talk to Janelle Dumoulin all the way in Frankfurt. Hello, Janelle. Thank you very much for joining us, and good afternoon. The global markets seem retreating from the bloody Tuesday scare over North Korea's missile threat. Now, what are investors and traders focusing on today, and why?
You're definitely right there. European markets do seem to be shrugging off the threat of that scare. And if you need any indication, the best performing stocks across Europe today are banks, insurance, and media. Yesterday, those were the worst performing stocks, so that could give you an indication of just how much of an about-face investors have made. Of course, the geopolitical tensions themselves haven't disappeared completely, so we might be seeing a risk-off, risk-on attitude sort of switch between the next days. But as it happened, we didn't see any more aggressive rhetoric come out of the White House, and investors seem to be calmed by that fact. And as it happens now, investors have a range of different topics to now react to. This morning, for example, we saw the ratings agency Moody's provide its growth forecast for the G20 countries, and it's predicting growth of 3%, of about 3% for this year and the next. Special bright spots include Asian G20 economies like China, Japan, and South Korea. The Eurozone is also seen as a particularly well-performing part of the world, with Germany, Italy, and Italy, and France, with their forecasts all rising upwards. Now, the outlier here seems to be the United States. Now, Moody's actually cut its forecast for the United States on a weaker first half year than expected, and of dwindling expectations that Donald Trump will be able to deliver on the fiscal stimulus he promised. And that actually leads us to another thing that investors are watching out for today. Donald Trump is expected to outline his tax reform plans, his plans to cut corporate taxes today. And investors are expecting perhaps a speech that's heavy on posturing but light on details. Nevertheless, they will be watching it, and they will be wondering to see what Trump does with the very aggressive timeline that he's assigned to this. He wants to get this passed into legislation by the end of 2017. Seeing as we are already heading into September, nobody seems to think that this is achievable.
Right, Janelle, we just have one day to say goodbye to August. Now, it's a very heavy days of U.S. and China economic data such as jobs and PMI lying just ahead. How much of these would be key for the markets as we step into September?
You know, those figures are very important, and if you need an example of that, we just have to look at yesterday, where we saw that the dollar recovered somewhat after showing that U.S. consumer confidence was at a 5-month high and that house prices rose. Now, a series of strong economic data would also show investors that the Federal Reserve is probably on track in terms of trimming its balance sheet and of raising rates again. Now, we have GDP numbers out today, also private payroll, and we've seen that those numbers are better than expected. But of course, remember that in terms of GDP, Trump had promised 3% on a sustained basis. That's proving to be very lofty indeed. Now, Chinese PMI is also due tomorrow. Analysts are expecting a slight softening month on month, 51.3 this time around compared to 51.4 in July. But as it happens, readings that are above 50 are considered good. So perhaps the Chinese don't have that much to worry about.
Now let's look at Germany, where you are. There's a lot happening at the auto industry. Porsche is in the news over diesel dilemma as Volkswagen is recalling nearly 300,000 of its cars in the U.S. over 40 fuel pumps. Now drive us through all of these and more.
I'm very glad to take that drive with you. Now, you know, it's funny because Porsche actually introduced its new SUV Cayenne yesterday, just a few weeks after 21,000 Cayennes had to be recalled because they had dirty diesel engines, and the German Transport Ministry actually implemented a sales stop to the implemented models. Now, this time around, Volkswagen has a new headache. As you've already mentioned, 280,000 vehicles are being recalled due to defective fuel pumps. There's something wrong with how electrical power is transmitted to the fuel pumps control modules, and that is causing the vehicles to stall. Now, a failing fuel pump, that isn't on the same scale of the crisis as the Dieselgate crisis that Volkswagen has had to go through for the past 2 years. Remember that in 2015, they admitted to installing cheating emission software in 11 million cars all over the world. But certainly, this latest recall due to these faulty fuel pumps is just one more headache at a time, where Volkswagen really is trying to recover from this Dieselgate crisis that keeps growing and growing.
All right, thank you very much, Janelle, for your time. I hope to see you again tomorrow as Thursday drives us into a new month, September. Thank you for your time.